All right, Joel Klatt with Fox Sports is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What's up, Klatt? How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well, thanks a lot. Anyone that has listened to or watched our show for any period of time knows we are not a show that takes a topic and hammers it into the ground until nobody else wants to talk about it.
But
we did not do that with the Kayvon Thibodeaux thing. But now that we have you on, we do need to at least address it. And I know you said on Twitter, Klatt, you should have pushed back. You regret not doing that. There is no excuse. Just kind of walk us through, what was going on there. And I don't know. I don't really have a question, Klatt. I'm just setting the table for you to discuss it.
Well, it certainly stands that I wish I would have pushed back. There's no doubt in my mind. Having said that, it was an interesting form. It wasn't an interview. He was sitting with us the whole game, and we were watching the game as a watch party. So he was saying a lot of things that were, his own, opinion and stance on whatever it was, whether what he thought about the game. And in this instance, it was right before I was trying to let him go for the night. And he just said, "Hey, can I say one more thing?" And I'm like, "Okay, say whatever you want." And, he went into that spiel about Oregon and Nike and Alabama. And so I didn't really feel like it was my place to tell him he was wrong for why he made the decision in his life. But then also, I was just trying to get the exit and let him leave for the night. Having said all that, though, I certainly wish I would have pushed back because it wasn't factual, just about the Alabama education, even though he was talking more about a stigma, even though he used astigmatism. All of those things, guys, doesn't certainly let me off the hook. But that's kind of what went on. And I even thought of you guys when it became apparent that it was blowing up, and I was like, man, I got to go talk to those guys.
I've been in that situation where three things can be happening. One, in that situation, I'm also watching the game because I've got to carry a conversation about the game. Two, I've got sometimes a producer talking to my ear, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing next, so I'm not really listening to what I know it's a horrible way to do an interview, but sometimes I ask a question and I don't hear the answer.
Yeah, but how many times on this show have you agreed with something? You'd be like, what did I just agree with?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, it happens all the time, yeah.
And when I said I hear you, to be honest, I didn't understand, exactly what I was hearing. But it like I said, it is what it is, and it's certainly not the way I feel about Alabama's education nor their football program. So, it is unfortunate and certainly something I can learn from. And, that's why I said no excuses, though, because at the end of the day, those clips get put out in small chunks, and it was not right. So there's no excuses. I should have pushed back. It just is what it is.
Yeah, and the third thing is sometimes some people say such a dumb thing. I don't know what to say to them. I've been in interviews before. I used to anchor news for a brief period of time, and some guy said he was running for an office. I won't say which party, and he said one of the dumbest things ever. And I was like, I can't even justify the conversation here by asking him a question about that. So I just moved on, and people thought I was complicit to what he said.
Yeah,
I wasn't. Right. But it was such a dumb statement, I didn't even want the conversation to continue, so I moved on. All that said, I appreciate, as a lifelong Southerner, I appreciate you not making excuses and saying you wish you'd push back. I forgive you. There you go.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you're in the minority of Bama fans, certainly, and Bama grads, and rightly so.
Oh, trust me, if Alabama had won the national championship, we wouldn't give a damn. We wouldn't have cared at all. We wouldn't have cared.
That's a great point. Yeah. That's a great point. Well, listen, take solace then in the fact that you're going to be right back in that position next year because no one's close to Bama going into next season.
Well, and here's the fact, Joel. Look, I'm a Bama grad. I really didn't take offense to it. Kayvon Thibodeaux, does it really matter where he gets his education? Is that guy – I mean, the guy's going to be playing football for the next 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, and listen – I didn't agree with what he was saying. I didn't quite understand where he was headed. But I did keep thinking about that as well. When he said, like, hey, there's a job in the Nike office, I thought to myself, like, the question I wanted to ask was, like, you think you're going to need a job in the Nike office? Like, wait, what's happening right now? But he's certainly going to play for as long as he can. It'll be interesting because listen, the NFL scouts and personnel departments, they pore over everything. They're going to look at that. And, when he was talking about, I could have won a national championship, but that, wasn't the most important thing to me. So it'll be interesting to see how that is viewed by people that are making a decision about his future.
Well, ironically, the next time we will see the defending national champions on the field will be against Oregon and their former defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning. Do you think Stetson Bennett will be the starting quarterback for Kirby Smart in that game?
You know what? Maybe, I would say. I'd say maybe most likely. He certainly played well down the stretch, even if I was shouting at the TV from a clock management standpoint. I was happy for him. I was a walk-on. I understand the hurdles that you've got to jump through as somebody that is not highly recruited. And he played really well down the stretch, and that entire team and roster played remarkably well to win that game. And Bama fans would have to even agree with that, even though y'all were shorthanded, in particular at wide receiver, during the course of the second half of that game. I think he probably will be the quarterback because it's to me, coaches have a DNA. Coaches have a fingerprint. And Kirby's fingerprint is that he likes these guys that he's comfortable with. And it was painfully obvious during the course of this season that he's more comfortable with Stetson than he is with anybody else on the roster. Now, I guess it remains to be seen whether he's going to increase his depth at that position via the portal or not. I know that there were some leaked pictures of Caleb Williams, and we all assume he's going to USC, but people have speculated that he may end up at Georgia, so we'll see.
Joel Klatt is with us, Fox Sports and Joel Klatt on Twitter, and you are listening to him on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Do you see Georgia winning the championship, Klatt, as the beginnings of a shift back to a more defensive style of football? Because, that team won that very I don't even know how far back we'd have to go to find a team that won it with that style of football.
Well, I don't, and the reason is because of the way that game played out. And I'll say it this way: if Alabama is at full strength with Mechie and Williams, it still was clear to me even early in that game without Mechie that Georgia was going to struggle with Williams. And I mean, what did he have? 4 for 64 at the time of the injury. I mean, he's on his way to 150, 180, 200 yards receiving. And in the waning moments of that game, what ultimately did Alabama in really were two things. But the lack of execution and detail from the wide receivers was, it affected the game, and it cost them the game. On the last interception, for instance, the number one wide receiver doesn't run his clear route, and he doesn't run hard. And so the corner is able to fall off onto the Slade Bolden kind of slot fade and pick the ball off. On the other interception, the slot fade player just gets stacked by the defense and then just doesn't run through him, kind of stops and slows down, and then the ball gets picked off. The throw right before the last interception, it's a perfect throw from Bryce Young. And wide receiver goes up with one hand, doesn't go up with two hands. And he's looking back at his quarterback the entire time during the route, doesn't stack the defender. There's a bunch of detail errors at that position that cost them some drops. I think that with Williams on the field, it might have been a different case, even with just Williams. So I don't think that this is going to be some sort of overall shift back towards defensive football. I think that the offense that we're going to see from even Alabama next year, from Ohio State certainly, and others, will make it difficult to go win the game with just defense. Because remember, that was historically a great defense. How often do we see a defense? You guys have seen plenty of great ones, but how often do you see a defense that's powerful enough to just stop the run with their defensive line, as good as they were, and have the speed at the second level to run side to side to stop anything in that direction as well? That was a very unique defense. that Georgia had this year from a roster standpoint. I've given you this stat before, and it's still the most mind-blowing stat for me of the entire year. Georgia's defense on their 2 deep had 5 5-star players that were recruited as 5-star players. The entire Pac-12 conference had 9 5-star players. So I think I said that right. Georgia's defense, 9 5-star players. Entire Pac-12, 9 5-star players.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I appreciate you pushing back on the Pac-12's lack of talent there. I appreciate that. Joel.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah.
Trying to hold to the truth.
Hey, this portal thing, I don't know if it ever ends. Is there's no end period to this? Like there's a deadline to go to the NFL draft today. Are you comfortable with the portal, say Oklahoma players following Lincoln to, like Mario Williams to USC? Are the whole Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns going to Gainesville with Billy Napier, it looks like. Are you comfortable with that? I mean, the rights of the players and free movement that they've gotten now to basically a coach to take an entire roster, are we okay with that? Or is there anything you think the NCAA should do to police that?
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath if the NCAA does anything right. Let's start with that. Having said that, the unintended consequences of what is a good-spirited rule right now are kind of raging throughout the sport. And right now, I don't love the way that all of this is happening. And I think one of the things that I'm looking at this, like, there's several different factors. You know, should a coach be able to pillage his old roster? You know, this one-time transfer. Where can kids go? Should they be able to go? Blah, blah, blah. I think it actually comes down to calendar and roster management. One of the reasons that you don't see this type of chaos in the NFL is certainly the player's contract, and that obviously has something to do with it. But it's also the fact that there is a structure to the calendar of when free agency happens, when the draft happens, when guys are going to sign. Like you said, the deadline today for players to declare for the NFL draft who are going that way out of college. And the calendar helps from a roster management standpoint. And when you can manage the roster, then it becomes a little bit more difficult for the players to move. And I'm not trying to say that it should be more difficult. I'm just saying that there should be more boundaries and guardrails. For instance, I believe that the transfer portal should be closed or just not open, closed during the season. There's no reason to allow for an emotional decision from an 18 to 24-year-old, 23-year-old during the season. He feels like he doesn't get enough playing time on a Saturday in October, and he can get into the transfer portal at 8 a.m. on Sunday. I don't think that that's right. I don't think that that serves anybody. So certainly changes to that transfer portal need to be made and need to be addressed so that we can have a more cohesive sport from a roster management standpoint. The last thing I would say is that we've got way too many kids that think that they're going to get into the portal and re-enter this greatest phase of their life, which was the recruiting phase. Why? Because everyone told them how great they were during recruiting. And so they feel like they're going to go back into this and they're going to be recruited and everything is going to be hunky-dory. And the fact remains, there aren't enough spots or scholarships left on rosters for the number of guys that are in the portal. So they threw away full scholarships at universities throughout this country for what? To have someone compliment you? It certainly needs to change. There needs to be some guardrails so that it helps both the coach and his roster management and the player not throw away scholarship opportunities.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. Go follow him on Twitter and Joel Klatt. See him on Fox and when college football rolls back around. Klatt, thank you for the time. It is always fun talking with you.
I appreciate it, fellas. Have a good one. We'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. Take care. Joel Klatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.